Okay, this is part 4393 of Nos4a2. Outside. Every time Tabitha Hutter settled and went still, the mosquitoes returned, whining at one ear or the other. Brushing her cheeks, she startled two of them, sweeping them off her and into the night. If Hutter had to work a stakeout, she preferred the car, liked air conditioning, and her iPad. It was a matter of principle not to complain. She would die of blood loss first, sucked dry by the fracking little vampires. She especially wasn't going to grumble about it in front of Daltrey, who squatted down with the others and then sat there like a statue, a smirk on his mouth and his eyelids half closed. When a mosquito settled on his temple, she slapped it and left a bloody smudge on his skin. He jerked but then nodded his appreciation. "They love you," he said to her. "The mosquitoes. They love all that tender lady flesh, gently marinating in grad school. You probably taste like veal." There were three others at the surveillance post in the woods, including Sidra, all of them dressed in lightweight black range shells over tactical body armor. One agent held the sonic dish, a black gun with a mouth like a megaphone and a coiled black telephone cord stretching to the receiver in his ear. Hutter leaned forward, tapped his shoulder, whispered, "Are you getting anything out of that?" The man with the listening device shook his head. "I hope they're getting something at the other position. I don't hear anything except white noise. It's been nothing but static ever since that little burst of thunder." "It wasn't thunder," Daltrey said. "It didn't sound anything like thunder." The guy shrugged. The house was a one-story log cabin with a pickup parked out front. A single dim lamp was on in the front sitting room. One of the shades was halfway up, and Hutter could see a television, turned off, a couch, a hunting print on the wall. Some girly white lace curtains hung in another front window, indicating a bedroom. There couldn't be much else in there, a kitchen and back, a bathroom, maybe a second bedroom, although that would be pushing it. So that meant Carmody and Christopher McQueen were in the back of the house. "Is it possible they're whispering?" Hutter asked, "and your equipment isn't sensitive enough to pick them up?" "When this is working, it's about sensitive enough to pick up loud thoughts," said the man with the earpiece. "The problem is that it's too sensitive. It caught a blast of something it couldn't handle and maybe blew a capacitor." Citra rooted in the gym bag and came up with a can of Deep Woods Off. "Thank you," Hutter said, taking it from her. She glanced at Daltrey. "You want?" They rose together so she could spray him down. Standing, she could see a bit of the slope behind the house rising toward the tree line. Two squares of warm amber-hued light spread out across the grass, light from the windows at the rear of the house. She squeezed the button, sprayed white mist over Daltrey. He shut his eyes. "You know what I think that big loud sound was," he said. "That fat bastard keeling over. Thanks, that's enough." She stopped spraying. He opened his eyes. "You going to be okay if he drops dead?" "He didn't have to run," she said. "You didn't have to let him." Daltrey grinned when he said it. "You enabled the poor boy." Hutter felt an urge, clear and simple, to spray off into Daltrey's eyes. And there it was, the source of her discomfort, her restlessness. Lewis Carmody seemed too trusting, too good-humored, too worried about his boy, too kind to his ex to have anything to do with Wayne's disappearance. He was, Hutter thought, an innocent, but she had hung him out there anyway, to see where he'd lead her, and never mind, he could drop off from a stroke at any time. If the big man stroked out, was that on her head? She supposed it was. "We need to see what he'd do. Remember, this isn't about his well-being, it's about the boys." Daltrey said, "You know why I like you, Hutter? Really like you. You're a bigger son of a bitch than I am." Hutter thought, not for the first time, that she hated a lot of cops. Ugly, mean drunks who believed the worst of everyone. She shut her eyes and misted off over her head and face and neck. When she opened her eyes and exhaled to blow away the poison, she saw that the lights in the back of the house had gone out, had vanished from the lawn. She wouldn't have noticed it if she were crouching down. Hunter shifted her gaze to the front room. She could see the hall leading to the back of the house, but no one came down it. She glanced at the front bedroom, waited for someone to turn a light on there. No one did. Daltrey hunkered down with the others, but she remained standing. After a minute, he craned his head back to look at her. "Are you pretending to be a tree?" "Who do we have watching the rear of the house?" she asked. The second state trooper, a guy who had until now not spoken, looked back at her. His face was pale and freckled, and with his ginger hair he somewhat resembled Conan O'Brien. "No one, but nothing's back there. Miles of woods, no trail. Even if they made us, they wouldn't run that Hutter was already stalking away, hands stretched out in front of her to protect her face from branches. Citra caught up to her in 4 steps. She had to hustle to keep up, her handcuffs jangling on her belt. "You are concerned?" she asked. Behind her she heard a branch snap, heard shoes crunching in the deadfall. That would be Daltrey, following in no particular hurry. He was as bad as the mosquitoes. She needed a spray to repel him. "No," Hutter said. "You had a position. There was no reason not to hold it. If they leave, they'll go out the front door. That's completely reasonable." "So?" "I'm puzzled." "About?" "Why they're sitting in the dark. They shut the lights off back here, but they didn't come into the front of the house, so that means they're sitting in the back of the house with the lights off. Doesn't that seem peculiar?" On her next step, her foot sank into cold brackish water, 3 inches deep. She grabbed the slender trunk of a birch sapling to steady herself. In another yard, Hutter was in up to her knees. The water didn't look any different from the ground, a black surface carpeted in leaves and branches. As Daltrey came up beside them, he plunged into the water up to his thighs, staggered, nearly fell. "We could use a light," Citra said. "Or a snorkel," Daltrey said. "No light," Hutter said, "and you can go back there if you don't like getting wet." "What, and miss all the fun? I'd rather drown." "Don't get our hopes up," Hutter told him.